allies rush to his defense as he lashes out on Twitter. Also breaking, inmates on the loose, and now the manhunt intensifying. 4 Ohio inmates overpowering 2 female guards. Police say they're all extremely dangerous. The midair scare, passengers watching through the window as an engine panel flaps in the wind, the pilots turning back. The showdown in the streets as clashes in Hong Kong take a violent new turn. Protesters beaten by police before other demonstrators jump in, all setting up what could be a fierce face-off this week. Also tonight, a female suspect taking a victim hostage inside of a police station with a meat cleaver, how officers took her down. Terror at the mall, the new charges just revealed after a suspect drove a vehicle through the front door of a Sears, what authorities say they discovered on the suspect's cell phone. The school bus driver already facing a DUI charge after a student called 911. Tonight, the video from inside that bus. Children heard screaming in fear. And winter's first blast, more than 3 feet of snow for some, while millions from the Midwest to the Northeast get ready for one more taste of summer.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday. We begin tonight with major developments involving President Trump, the whistleblower complaint, and what could be a key moment in the impeachment battle. Several allies of the president coming to his defense today amid increasing pressure over that phone call with the head of Ukraine that has kickstarted the official impeachment inquiry. But Democrats say the investigation into whether the president abused his power by asking a foreign government to get dirt on a political opponent is moving forward, and quickly. Tonight, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff has confirmed the whistleblower who shared the initial concern has reached an agreement to testify. The controversy has set up what could be a defining week for President Trump and the race for the White House. Here's ABC's David Wright.
Today, the president's defenders fanned out,
Salem witch trials have more due process than this,
lashing out at the impeachment inquiry.
The president of the United States is the whistleblower, and this individual is a saboteur trying to undermine a democratically elected government.
This weekend, the president himself tweeted a defiant White House video blasting the Democrats.
They're trying to stop me because I'm fighting for you, and I'll never let that happen.
We're moving forward with all speed, and that's really what's important here.
One of the Democrats leading the congressional hearings, House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff, says the whistleblower who filed the initial complaint against the president has agreed to testify, with precautions taken to protect that person's identity.
So when do you expect to hear from the whistleblower?
Very soon. It will depend probably more on how quickly the Director of National Intelligence can complete the security clearance process for the whistleblower's lawyers, but we're ready to hear from the whistleblower as soon as that is done.
Today, the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, named more than 30 times in the whistleblower's report, suggested he'll only cooperate with the congressional inquiry if the president says he can.
Will you cooperate with the House Intelligence Committee?
I wouldn't cooperate with Adam Schiff. If they put a neutral person in who hasn't prejudged the case, if they put someone in, a Democrat who hasn't expressed an opinion yet,
Judge, so that's your answer. You're not going to cooperate.
I didn't say that. I said I will consider it.
You said you wouldn't do it.
You
said you will not cooperate with Adam Schiff.
I said I will consider it. I have to be guided by my client.
A new ABC News Ipsos poll suggests that for now, the public is giving Congress the benefit of the doubt. Asked how serious a problem is the allegation that Trump encouraged the Ukrainian president to investigate Joe Biden and his son in that July phone call, 43% said very serious. 20% said somewhat serious. Trump's former Homeland Security advisor Tom Bossert told This Week he's, quote, deeply disturbed by the phone call.
It is a bad day and a bad week for this president and for this country if he is asking for political dirt on an opponent.
Tonight, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tells 60 Minutes the call is just part of the investigation.
It's not just what happens in the call. It's part of the sequencing of events as well. You withdraw a couple $100 million worth of assistance to a country and then a couple of days later say, by the way, can you help me with my campaign, in other words. There's a sequencing there.
All right, David Wright joins us now live from the White House. And David, we heard Chairman Adam Schiff in your report there. The House Intelligence Committee is going to move forward quickly. Congress is in a 2-week recess, but the committee is calling witnesses?
It is, Tom, and at a fast pace. This week, they expect to hear from the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, also the former U.S. special envoy to Ukraine. He just resigned last week. And they'll hear from the inspector general who escalated the whistleblower complaint, calling it credible and of urgent concern. That hearing will take place behind closed doors, Tom.
David Wright starting us off tonight. David, thank you. Next tonight, to the manhunt for 4 inmates on the loose. It's now expanding to several states. Officials in southeastern Ohio say the 4 men overpowered 2 female corrections officers with a homemade weapon and had a car waiting for them. Tonight, that vehicle recovered across state lines, but they're still on the run, and authorities say they are extremely dangerous. Here's ABC's Zachary Quiche.
Tonight, an all-out manhunt for 4 inmates described as extremely dangerous who forced their way out of jail.
Our detectives have established that the inmates had the assistance in escaping from at least 1 individual on the outside.
Officials say the 4 overpowered 2 female corrections officers just after midnight, forcing their way out with homemade weapons at the Gallia County Jail in Ohio.
The homemade weapon was what is commonly referred to as a shank.
One gained access to the administration wing of the jail, where he stole the keys to one of the police vehicles and drove away. Police say the inmates had a vehicle waiting for them 1 block south. Now, law enforcement in 3 states are working to apprehend the inmates. This afternoon, police in Pennsylvania locating that getaway vehicle. And out of an abundance of caution, officials shutting down and evacuating this mall. But so far, no sign of the inmates. Tom, this is the second time in just a month that one of those inmates escaped from this jail. Lots of questions tonight about security at that facility. Tom?
Zachary, thank you. Now to the midair scare on board a United flight heading from Denver to Orlando. Passengers inside the cabin witnessing a piece of an engine panel, you see it right there, flapping in the wind during the flight. The pilot's quickly returning to Denver, and ABC's Diane Macedo has the details.
It's among the last things you want to see when looking out of your airplane window mid-flight. A panel partially detached from the engine, flapping in the wind. United Flight 293 had just left Denver when the pilot called for help.
We need to get back to Denver, relatively speaking, as quick as possible.
When you get a chance, nature of the emergency.
The panel has become detached from the airplane. We have about 6 hours of fuel, and we have 196 people.
The flight was headed for Orlando, but just before 8:30 a.m., roughly a half hour after takeoff, it landed safely back at Denver International Airport. This photo of the plane on the ground shows the mangled panel with the interior of the engine exposed. United says in a statement, United Flight 293 from Denver to Orlando returned to the airport due to a mechanical issue with one of the engines. The flight landed safely and taxied to a gate where customers deplaned normally. And United says those customers are finally out of Denver. According to the airline, they departed on a different aircraft headed to Orlando. Tom?
Diane Macedo with that wild video tonight. Diane, thank you. And a new potential safety issue involving Boeing passenger planes. The FAA instructing airlines to inspect all Boeing 737 NG jetliners after Boeing reported evidence of cracking on a part that helps attach the wing to the fuselage. The new concern comes as Boeing's 737 MAX fleet remains grounded in the wake of 2 deadly crashes. We head overseas now to Hong Kong and one of the most violent days in 17 weeks of demonstrations. This is new video showing protesters firing objects at police and officers cracking down with batons. You see it right there before other protesters jumped in to defend them. More protests are expected Tuesday despite a police ban as China marks 70 years of communist rule. ABC's foreign correspondent Ian Pannell is once again in Hong Kong.
It was terrifying clashes like these that China's leaders were hoping to contain. Mass clashes on the streets of Hong Kong turning violent again. Molotov cocktails hurled by pro-democracy protesters exploding into balls of flame. Others tearing bricks from the sidewalk to use as missiles. The police storming into the crowd with brute force. And some fought back. In response, tear gas, round after round.
Let's move back.
Our team caught in the crossfire.
Thank you.
As protesters fled baton-wielding police, some were snatched, zip-tied and marched off. Others pinned to the ground, knees to their necks.
You can hear the sound of some kind of shot. I'm not sure what it is. But rubber bullets, tear gas, and look, You see the water cannons just come out.
This week is critically important to Beijing. The People's Republic of China preparing for its 70th anniversary celebrations on Tuesday. President Xi wants to showcase a new, modern, peaceful and prosperous China, but protesters in Hong Kong resent its growing shadow and want the world to see its other face. Taking to the streets for 4 tumultuous months. Some even equating Beijing's rule with the Nazi regime. And tonight, with tensions high, the question is, who will blink first?
And Ian Pannell joins us now live from Hong Kong as protesters and authorities there prepare for that big anniversary on Tuesday, a milestone for China.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. A huge milestone with China planning to showcase its economic and military might. But if the protesters have their way, we'll be seeing other images on our TV screens. We are expecting a significant uptick in violence, with one group calling themselves the Expendables planning to do more than just hurl stones. Tom?
Ian Pannell, who will be covering all those demonstrations all week. Ian, thank you. Next tonight, a terror charge has been filed against a man who drove an SUV into a suburban Chicago shopping mall. You may remember the frightening scene earlier this month caught on camera, shoppers seen scrambling for safety. That driver was taken into custody at the scene, and now authorities revealing what they found on his phone. ABC's Kaylee Hartung reports.
Tonight, the man behind the wheel during this horrifying attack on a mall, charged with terrorism.
Yo, this is not happening right now.
The mayhem caught on this cell phone video in the Chicago suburbs. You hear the SUV's tires screeching.
Oh my God.
And people hysterically screaming as they run for their lives.
I was helping a customer, and all of a sudden, this SUV started coming towards my kiosk. If I would stay in my kiosk, I wouldn't be here today. I'll be gone.
The state's attorney's office saying there's evidence the attack was planned. Officials claim 22-year-old suspect Javier Garcia's cell phone history showed he searched Woodfield Mall, aerials, and the premises 124 times in the 24 hours leading up to the attack. 35 of those searches allegedly focusing on the Sears store he initially plowed into.
Law enforcement has always been concerned about malls. It also, unfortunately, is a fairly soft target. There's actually no way to defense against possible bad behavior.
Although no one was injured, new details reveal more about the depth of the chaos that afternoon. Authorities describing how the driver narrowly missed a train attraction transporting children. After crashing into structural pillars, it was 2 off-duty police officers, patrons in the mall, who pulled the driver out of the car and detained him until police arrived.
A judge denied Garcia bond today. His defense attorney saying the man is being treated for bipolar disorder and paranoid schizophrenia. And Tom, this man has no criminal history.
But again, still being charged with terrorism, right?
That's right.
All right, Kaylee, thank you. We turn now to a school bus driver allegedly drunk on the job in Washington State, already facing a DUI charge after a student called 911. Tonight, the frightening video from inside that bus, and you can hear the children screaming in fear. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
Oh my gosh, he's crazy!
Tonight, parents in Washington State getting a first look at their children's terrifying bus ride home from school.
No, whoa, no!
Police say the driver, 48-year-old Catherine Macarone, was under the influence while behind the wheel earlier this month. Newly released video capturing the panic on the bus. Young students screaming on the edge of their seats.
I am crazy. I'm totally crazy.
A boy rushing home to call 911, telling the operator his driver sped through 3 red lights.
She's like wobbling, and then her eyes, you can tell she was drunk.
Did she smell of alcohol?
Her breath sort of smells like alcohol.
Macarone driving 90 students that afternoon, later arrested.
This is going to be a DUI.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was hoping the kid wasn't right.
She's charged with a DUI and 2 counts of reckless endangerment. Officers noting they smelled an obvious odor of intoxicants.
That school district says it has implemented new safety procedures to better screen for drivers. And as for Macarone, she was not available for comment but has since resigned, and she will appear before court in about 2 weeks. Tom?
Some frightening moments for those children. All right, Rachel, thank you. Next tonight, the extreme weather. We're tracking on both coasts tonight. The season's first major winter storm is slamming the high Rockies, dumping more than 3 feet of snow in some spots. At the same time, a major warm-up for millions from the Midwest to the Northeast, with one more taste